The tension inside the courtroom was thick enough to slice through. As the bailiff's voice rang out, signaling the beginning of day 21, a charged silence settled over the gallery. All eyes locked onto Sean Diddy Combs as he stepped into the witness box, his expression carefully composed, but beneath the surface, a storm of nerves simmered. The judge adjusted his glasses, his voice stern and deliberate, reminding the spectators and jury of their solemn responsibility and to weigh the evidence not by fame, but by fact. Outside, a crowd had gathered, faces pressed to glass, camera phones aloft, desperate to see what drama was unfolding behind the walls of justice. Then, the prosecutor rose from his seat, his voice controlled but cutting. "Mr. Combs," he began, "you're aware that this trial has already examined claims of influence, cover-ups, and manipulation. Today, we focus on your personal life, your relationship with your son, Justin Dior Combs. Please tell the court in your own words why this is relevant." Diddy's jaw tensed. He drew in a slow breath before answering. "I know the prosecution thinks my private life reflects my character," he said, "but my relationship with Justin, that's always been personal and private." His voice, seasoned by decades in the spotlight, now trembled ever so slightly, stripped of performance, grounded in something more vulnerable. The prosecutor leaned in, eyes sharp. "There's long been speculation that you kept Justin hidden from public view, supported him through undisclosed means. Why hide him? Why the secrecy?" Diddy straightened, his hands gripping the wooden ledge. "I didn't want my son living under a microscope," he said firmly. "No flashing lights, no tabloid frenzy. I gave him a normal life, schooling, healthcare, daily needs, all arranged discreetly through a trust fund." His words were steady, but there was a protective edge to his tone, the kind a father has when shielding his child from the world's claws. Camera slowly pans to jury scribbling notes. Before we dive deeper into this powerful moment, remember to like this video, subscribe, and tap the bell, so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping development in this case. Screen fades back in. The prosecutor then presented a stack of papers, unfolding them with practiced precision. These bank records show regular transfers marked family support, but also some labeled JD Education. Payments sent to an address never linked to you publicly. Were those for Justin? The judge leaned slightly forward as the documents made their way to the defense table, then the jury. Diddy stared down at the pages. A pause. "Yes," he finally said, "that address, that's where Justin and his mother lived when I created the trust. I never concealed it. I just never advertised it." Jurors glanced at each other. Pens moved faster. "I believed keeping Justin away from the spotlight was the best thing I could do for him," Diddy continued. "I never wanted to mislead anyone." As he spoke, his gaze swept slowly across the jury box. He looked each juror in the eye, not as a celebrity, but as a man hoping to be understood. And for a moment, the grandeur of the courtroom faded into something more intimate. A father pleading for context. Then came the next name, Marcus Allen, the prosecutor. Called. "Please approach the stand." A tall, composed man in his early 40s stepped forward, a longtime family friend, and the man responsible for Justin's early education. Marcus straightened his tie and raised his right hand as the oath was given. The room settled again, bracing for the next piece of the puzzle. "Mr. Allen, you handled Justin's tutoring and extracurricular programs," the prosecutor said. "How were those arranged?" Marcus nodded, voice clear. "When Justin was 5, Sean asked me to enroll him in private courses, music, academics, martial arts, all funded through a shell company account. At first, I didn't even know Justin's last name." The courtroom stirred. A whisper passed through the jury. "And why the anonymity?" the prosecutor pressed. Marcus didn't blink. "Sean insisted on privacy. No headlines, no press. He wanted Justin protected, even if that meant operating quietly." He continued, describing how he coordinated with a tutoring agency called Project Legacy, which helped mask Justin's identity. Even the driver's license used for school registration registered under an alias. The defense tried to object, arguing that privacy isn't inherently criminal, but the judge swiftly overruled, reminding the court that motive and intent were key. Back on the stand, Marcus recounted a memory. The first time Diddy visited Justin's small suburban school. "No entourage," he said, "no camera crew, just him, hood up, sunglasses on. He stayed for 15 minutes, no announcements, hugged Justin, and slipped out the back door." The image hung in the air, tender and quiet, a striking contrast to the veil of secrecy that surrounded it. The prosecutor leaned in again. "Mr. Allen, did you ever witness tension between Mr. Combs' public image and his private role as a father?" Marcus took a long pause, then nodded. "Yes," he said slowly. "At a holiday recital, Justin played a piano solo. Sean was backstage, pacing. He was anxious, afraid the performance wouldn't meet his expectations. Afterward, he apologized to the music teacher, said he wanted to be a good father, that he worried he'd failed." A soft gasp moved through the gallery. For the first time, the courtroom saw the man behind the myth. Not just a mogul, but a father wrestling with doubt. Marcus's testimony painted a portrait of secret love and careful orchestration. The lengths one man went to, not to hide shame, but to protect what he cherished. When asked further, Marcus acknowledged there were occasional missed payments, last-minute address changes, signs of Diddy's unpredictable life. But he insisted Justin never lacked for anything. Not care, not love. As Marcus stepped down, something shifted. The gallery felt it. The jury felt it. The rumor had been stripped away, revealing something raw, real, and deeply human. Now the stage was set. The truth was no longer secondhand. The bailiff's voice rang again, this time with gravity. "All rise for the witness, Justin Dior Combs." Every person in the room stood. The jurors, the press, the gallery, and then he entered, tall, composed, escorted by 2 officers. Paused at the door, glanced at the crowd, then walked toward the stand, a son, a secret, a voice, finally ready to be heard. Before he even reached the witness stand, the weight in the room changed. The judge met his eyes and quietly walked him through the oath. Solemn words that transformed him. He was no longer a hidden name in whispered circles. He was now the boy at the center of it all. The prosecutor's voice softened, measured as if trying not to spook him. "Justin, thank you for being here today," he said. "Can you tell the court, when did you first find out that Sean Combs was your father?" Justin inhaled, his breath slow but steady. He kept his eyes on the room, not on the bench. "I was 10. He said. "My mom sat me down after school and gave me a letter. It was from him, from my dad." A wave moved through the courtroom. Years of speculation, now confirmed with ink on paper, passed down to a boy who had no idea the world would one day lean in to hear it. He wrote that he'd been watching from a distance, that he loved me, Justin said. He said when I was ready, he'd come into my life. The prosecutor gently led him further. Justin described their first meeting. "It wasn't some mansion. We met in a tiny cafe. He wore a hoodie and a baseball cap, just trying to blend in. Said he wanted it to feel normal, like a regular dad. At a corner table they sat, 2 hot chocolates between them. Mine had extra marshmallows," Justin added, a ghost of a smile forming. He said sorry for not being there, that he didn't want his world to hurt mine. Every word was soaked in a kind of soft ache, like a memory he'd carried too long. The courtroom leaned closer, nearly holding its breath as Justin shared more. Quiet, midnight visits, secret rehearsals. He'd come to the school auditorium. After hours, he said. "I was in the school play. I'd see him in the shadows backstage. He never said, 'I'm famous.' He just said, 'I'm here.' A global icon, hiding in darkness just to catch a glimpse of his son on stage." Prosecutor asked gently, "How did it feel when you found out those bank transfers were for you?" Justin's face changed. "At first, I was grateful," he said. "Then I started wondering, why couldn't he just say it? Why the aliases, the hidden names, the shell companies? Why did it feel like I was being hidden too?" His voice cracked ever so slightly. "I know, he thought he was protecting me, but at times I wondered, was he proud of me or ashamed of what the world might think?" As Justin stepped down from the stand, a visible sigh moved through the gallery. What was once gossip was now flesh and feeling, and that letter, the one that started it all, was still waiting to be revealed. The judge brought order back with a single gavel tap. Silence followed as the prosecutor rose once more. "You mentioned a letter," he said. "The one your father sent. Can you tell us, what did it feel like, reading it?" Justin's gaze moved across the room, the jury, the crowd, and finally, his father at the defense table. He drew in another breath, steadying himself. "I felt everything," he said. "Surprise, hope, and a lot of confusion." He described the letter, handwritten, unmistakable, large loops on the W's, perfect curves on the D's. Justin said it began with "my beloved son" and ended with "I will earn the right to be your father every single day." He paused, giving the room a beat to absorb that. Between those lines, he added, were pages of apology for the years he missed, the nights I waited, the calls I made where no one picked up. A murmur ran through the seats. He said he kept our relationship buried to protect me from his world. Justin continued, but all it did was bury me. The prosecutor stood still, listening, letting the words hang. Justin leaned in a little. There was an envelope inside the letter with photos. He described them. One was my 5th birthday, the blue icing on the cake. Another for my elementary graduation, I was valedictorian. In both, I'm looking at the camera. In one, I'm smiling. Then the line that broke something in the air. He wrote, I wish I'd seen that smile in person. The jurors looked down. Pen scratched hurriedly. Then the defense stood, careful with his tone. Justin, he began, your feelings are valid. But consider this. Many high-profile parents keep their children out of public view. Couldn't that be what your father was doing? Justin's jaw tightened. Something shifted. Protecting me doesn't mean pretending I don't exist, he said. You don't keep someone safe by erasing them. In the background, Diddy sat still, his expression unreadable, and the air turned electric. The collision of fame and fatherhood sparking in every corner of the courtroom. The prosecutor returned. Justin, did your father ever try to make good on that promise? To earn his place? Justin nodded slowly. In little ways, yes, he said. He'd call before big events. He'd send flowers on Mother's Day. He even came to a basketball game, quietly. But there was this one time, he continued, I asked him to sing with me at our school's charity concert, a duet. A soft intake of breath was heard in the gallery. He said no, Justin added, said it was too risky for my privacy. He looked out across the courtroom. That night, I sang alone. I imagined he was backstage, maybe with his arm around my mom. But when I finished, I looked behind the curtain, and it was just empty. A beat passed. He swallowed hard. That's when I realized, he said, you can hide from cameras, but you can't hide a father's absence from his son's heart. Silence gripped the room. No one moved. Only the sound of paper as the judge flipped a page. Then the final push from the prosecutor. You kept those photos. That letter. Why? Now, why reveal them? Justin looked straight at the jury. I gave them to my mom, he said. She kept them in a safe. I didn't want them to become evidence. I wanted them to be ours. But when I got the subpoena, I knew, he said. It was time. Time to tell the truth, whatever it costs. The judge gave a solemn nod. Your honesty is noted. Then the defense stood again, slower this time. Justin, do you understand that what you've said today could change your father's life forever? Justin straightened. Calm, resolute. I do, he said, but I also know this. The truth matters more than the image. If people see him differently now, then so be it. As the day's proceedings neared their end, the tension in the room didn't fade. It deepened. The bailiff approached to escort Justin from the stand. Before leaving, the prosecutor offered him a nod, one of quiet respect. Then, turning to the jury, his tone shifted from warm to resolute. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard the voice of a son, unfiltered, unguarded, and undeniable. He let the weight of that sentence sit, heavy and still. But now, he continued, we turn to physical evidence, documents that may confirm what his words have already revealed. A murmur moved through the courtroom. The emotion of family, of betrayal and protection, still echoed off the carved wooden walls. And now, the very letter that lived at the heart of the case and was ready to speak for itself. The bailiff stepped forward again, this time holding a sealed envelope. The label, Evidence Exhibit JDC 1. The prosecutor stood slowly, receiving it with care. Your Honor, he said, this envelope contains the handwritten letter from Mr. Combs to his son, a piece we believe essential to understanding the truth of their relationship. The judge gave a subtle nod. With delicate fingers, the prosecutor opened the seal. He removed the aged sheet of stationery and laid it gently on the lectern. Then he turned to the jury. You will now hear select excerpts, he said, and then view the letter in its entirety. The lights dimmed slightly. Two assistants positioned a document display beneath a glass panel. The handwriting magnified and visible to all. The room went still. The prosecutor cleared his throat. My beloved Justin, I write this tonight filled with both pride and regret. pride in the young man you've become, and regret for every moment I failed to share with you. I knew that my world of lights and noise would never hold you like a father's arms should. So I stayed distant, believing that hiding was helping, but I see now. I may have hidden myself from you entirely. I promise, from this moment forward, I will earn the right to be your dad every single day until nothing can break our bond. A breathless quiet fell across the room. Each juror leaned in, absorbing every word. The prosecutor looked up from the page. Notice that phrase, earn the right. That's not just affection, that's admission that the bond had been broken or never built at all. He let it linger. Then, stepping back, he turned toward the defense table. Counsel, would you like to call any witnesses before we begin cross-examination of the document's authenticity? The defense attorney slowly shook his head, returning. To the letter, the prosecutor resumed. I'll step out from the shadows, one step at a time, and when the world forgets where I stand, I hope you'll remember that I always stood for you. Love, Dad. A soft inhale rippled through the gallery. Reporters stopped typing. Even Justin's eyes welled with something. He wasn't trying to hide anymore. The judge leaned forward, studying him. Then the defense rose. Calm, rehearsed. Mr. Combs, he began. You wrote this letter without legal input, correct? Diddy nodded. Yes, every word was mine. The defense pressed on. Isn't it true that such letters can be designed, crafted to elicit emotion, to gain sympathy, regardless of intent? Diddy didn't flinch. No, he said plainly. This wasn't crafted, it was truth. My truth. The defense changed lanes. Let's talk chain of custody. How can we know that this letter, Exhibit JDC-1, hasn't been altered? Without missing a beat, the prosecutor stepped in. We have the certified storage log from the safe kept by Justin's mother, he said. Every instance of handling was recorded. The defense sat down. Their challenge had been met. The prosecutor turned back to the jury. You've heard a son's testimony, he said. Now you've read the father's confession in his own hand. Together they draw a single line, from secrecy to sincerity. Then he faced the judge. We move to admit Exhibit JDC-1 into evidence. The judge nodded once. A swift tap of the gavel followed. The letter was in. A pause swept the room. Not silence. Something deeper. A silence filled with recognition that the shield around this father-son bond had shattered. And now that relationship, once hidden, stood exposed beneath the fluorescent lights of the courtroom. Then the rhythm shifted. The prosecutor gave a small nod to a court aide. Within seconds, an evidence cart rolled forward, loaded with binders, documents, and a large chart mounted on an easel. Your Honor, he said, the state now calls Dana Rivera, forensic accountant. The bailiff stepped to the door, returning moments later with a composed woman in her early 40s. She adjusted her blazer and opened a slim notebook before addressing the judge with a courteous nod. The prosecutor began. Miss Rivera, you've reviewed tax filings, trust documentation, and bank records, all relating to Mr. Combs' payments marked JD Education and Family Support. Can you tell us what you found? Dana spoke with crisp precision. Yes, I traced the funds to a private entity, Combs Family Trust No. 7-, created in 2014 under an alias. The trustee was a Delaware-based corporation. Initial contributions, $500,000, she said, set aside for minor beneficiary expenses. She motioned to the chart. It showed a clean timeline. Each deposit, each withdrawal, spanning from 2015 to 2020. The trust disbursed over $1.2 million as Dana continued. Each transaction matched key events in Justin's life. Tuition in August, violin lessons in September, martial arts fees in March. Jurors followed the lines on the board. Patterns were forming, one step closer to truth. Did you notice any irregularities? The prosecutor asked. Dana's tone tightened. Yes, between 2017 and 2019, there were 3 unexplained payouts, each over $50,000, all dated late December. Labeled holiday bonus, though no holiday expenses were documented. The courtroom shifted, subtle murmurs, raised eyebrows. The implication hung in the air, but Dana wasn't finished. I also found internal trustee emails. She said, dated December 22nd, 2018. They contained urgent instructions, release funds before a scheduled press event. She opened a folder and handed printed copies to both attorneys. One email read, and I quote, ensure JD's account is credited before the press release goes live. The prosecutor looked back to the jury. So Mr. Combs, he said, slowly used his son's trust fund not just for care, but to shape public perception. Dana's voice didn't waver, her words were clear, pointed, a forensic blade cutting through the fog of public narrative. The timing of the disbursements, she said, and the language used strongly suggests that these funds weren't just for Justin's benefit. They were used to shape how the public saw Mr. Combs during moments of crisis. The courtroom shifted. Even the defense attorney looked unsettled as he stood. Brows furrowed, he walked slowly to begin cross-examination. Ms. Rivera, he said, isn't it true that distributions from a trust can be discretionary? That trustees aren't bound to line items or receipts? Dana nodded. Yes, trustees do have discretion, but these weren't normal patterns. The memos, the dates, the context, they don't add up. She met his gaze, steady. A trust exists to serve the beneficiary, and here, the pattern shows dual intent, care for the child, and crisis management for the father's image. Before the defense could reply, the judge raised a hand. Counsel, please keep this focused on what matters. That was the cue. The defense backed off. No further questions. Dana stepped down, her findings leaving a buzz of whispers in her wake, because now something was undeniable. The line between personal protection and public manipulation had started to blur. The prosecutor returned to the floor. Your Honor, he said, we now introduce Exhibit JDC-2, a certified copy of the trust agreement and emails tying disbursement requests to media events. The judge nodded. Admitted. Jurors leaned forward as the binders were passed. Out. Pages thick with legal language, trust instructions, and highlighted lines in corporate email threads. The air tightened. The financial trail had been laid bare, but it was the intention behind it that now cast shadows across the courtroom. Whispers turned to tension. Had Justin's childhood been shaped not just by wealth, but by control? Had the care he received been intertwined with Diddy's need to protect an empire? And if so, did that concealment go deeper than anyone had assumed? The prosecutor didn't spell it out. He didn't need to. These financial choices, he said, voice low and deliberate, fit into Mr. Combs' broader strategy. Secret letters, private visits, a trust built under an alias. He looked each juror in the eye. This wasn't just secrecy, it was curation, a man crafting a life in the shadows, even if that shadow included his own son. The judge called a brief recess. The courtroom rippled to life. Reporters scribbling, lawyers murmuring about rebuttals, jurors filing out with shoulders heavy from what they'd just seen. No words, just documents, numbers, dates, but they spoke volumes. The story was no longer just about hidden fatherhood. It had become something deeper, a test of honesty, of power, of legacy. When the courtroom resumed, the tension didn't let go. It clenched tighter. Justin Dior Combs stepped forward again, this time holding another envelope, labeled JDC-3. The room hushed. Even the jury, exhausted and saturated with data, sat straighter. Their attention sharpened. The judge gave a nod. The prosecutor gestured gently. Justin, when you're ready. He opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper, a letter, a different one. His voice was soft at first, but laced with something unshakable. My dearest Justin, if you're reading this, it means I've failed to find the perfect moment, one not polluted by fear or ego, to say all the things I've carried inside. I know hiding you was wrong. I see it in every photo that never captured your smile, in every holiday, every birthday, every milestone I should have been there for. Justin paused. The silence was so complete, it hummed. Then he looked down and continued. You are the greatest thing I've ever done. Greater than any album, any award, any tour. But pride means nothing without presence. So from this day forward, not as Diddy, not as a mogul, but as a father who got it wrong, I will show up for every recital, every school day. Every broken heart, I won't just be a name, I'll be your dad. When Justin looked back at the jury, his voice caught for a second. This letter wasn't part of the public release, he said. He gave it to me a few weeks ago, when no cameras were around, when he thought no one would ever read it. He folded the paper again, carefully. I kept it to myself, because it wasn't about the case. It was about us. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it's not just an apology, it's a roadmap, a way forward. The gallery murmured. Jurors whispered. Behind him, Diddy sat motionless. Defense counsel didn't move, didn't take a note. The prosecutor leaned in. Justin, where did this letter come from? Justin inhaled. We met in his office. Just us. No assistants, no press. He handed it to me directly. I didn't know what to make of it at the time, but I held on to it. He turned to the judge. I'm submitting it today as Exhibit JDC 3. The judge nodded. The bailiff stepped forward, retrieving the letter and placing it under glass beside the earlier exhibit. Then the prosecutor asked the question everyone was thinking. Why now, Justin? Why share this, something so personal and with the court? His answer was quiet, but it hit like thunder. Because this proves something, he said. He wasn't trying to hide me forever. He wanted to fix it. This letter shows it mattered to him, not as a headline, not as a PR move, but as a father. The defense finally stood. Calm, but urgent. Justin, is it possible your father wrote this to sway the jury, to trigger sympathy? Justin didn't blink. No. I've read hundreds of messages from him. Private ones. No cameras. No lawyers. This letter? It's consistent with all of them. The defense pressed. He promised to show up, to attend things in the future. But how can we know he'll keep that promise? Justin's voice didn't waver. Because he already has. He came to my last birthday. No security, no flash. He stayed the whole night. That wasn't about show, that was about me. And with that, it landed. A hush followed. Not just silence, understanding. The prosecutor rose. No further questions. Thank you, Justin. Justin stepped down, and the room seemed to shift with him. For everyone watching, in the gallery, at home, through a lens, this was the turning point where bank ledgers gave way to human truth, where the cold narrative of concealment cracked, and a deeper story of redemption was finally told. The judge called for closing arguments. The final chapter had begun. The prosecutor rose first, notes in hand, but eyes already locked on the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice deliberate. You've witnessed something extraordinary. Over these past days, we've heard from Mr. Combs about privacy, about protection, but we also uncovered financial trails hidden behind shell companies. He paced slowly. We heard from friends, from accountants, about trust distributions that rose and fell with scandal. He gestured toward the screen. And we heard from Justin, as a boy, and then as a man, one who read his father's words aloud and showed us that love, however buried, was still there. He stopped. This case isn't just about money. It's about intent. Were these acts born of love, or were they efforts to control public image? The prosecutor let that hang before concluding, you must weigh both, because inside the same house where silence lived, so did regret and perhaps the beginnings of redemption. Then he sat down, all eyes turned to the defense. Their counsel stood, straightened his tie, and walked slowly toward the jury. Members of the jury, he began, we've walked through a complex storm, but at the heart of it is something simple. Parenthood is hard, especially in the spotlight. He motioned toward Justin's seat. Mr. Combs didn't erase his son. He protected him. Every cent spent from that trust was for his son's well-being. He turned and stepped closer. You heard Justin say he felt hidden. But you must ask, would any loving father parade their child under flashing bulbs? He nodded solemnly. That letter? It wasn't a trick. It was fear of hurting the boy he loved. And if we criminalize that fear, won't we criminalize family itself? Then came the final instruction. If there's any doubt that Mr. Combs acted unlawfully, if this was love, not deception, you must find him not guilty. The room didn't breathe. Then the judge rose. You've heard the testimony, he said. Now it's time to deliberate. The jury stood and followed the bailiff, their expressions unreadable. Their task enormous. Attorneys gathered their papers, journalists whispered into phones, and at the defense table, Diddy Combs sat still, waiting, silent, his hands clasped, his legacy in limbo. The courtroom doors closed behind the jurors, and with them, the final echo of day 21, a day that began in secrecy and ended in truth.